of Allegiance?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We'll take roll call now.
Commissioner Plummer,
Present.
Commissioner Mamero,
Here?
Commissioner Garcia Ariola,
Here.
Vice Chair Margalotti,
Here.
and Chair Griggs.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any public comments at this time?
Thank you. Good evening. Can you please state your name for the record?
Hello, I'm Yanwell Colin Martinez.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Hey, thank you. So my name. I'm from Troop 7062 out of American Canyon, currently 16 years old, rank life, and trying to do my Eagle Scout project. The flyers I hand out for you were my proposal of what I wanted to do, and what I want to do is do a bike repair station on the Bay Area Trail, so on the Wetlands edge, basically, to where it would be accessible for people who may not have it or may not be able to afford bike tools or like a bike pump. Because I know I've had friends who just don't ride bikes because they don't have the tools to either repair their bikes or stuff like that. I wanted to start this project whenever I get city approval. So, and then after that would be 2 months, and my troop will be able to help me build and support me on the way. Where it would go would be, my idea was Wetlands Edge or on the Bay Trail. That's my preference, but again, it's up to the city. And then cost on the thing, it was a proposal of $2,500. I've talked to the ACCPF, and I know they're able to help me. I talked to Janelle about that, and then I'm have a meeting talking to the Napa Bike Coalition. And then what I want is for it to be accessible to everyone in American Canyon. That's why I would like it to be in Wetlands Edge, because I know there's a very high bike usage trail. And I would like to ask city for help for permits and stuff like that. And that's it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to make a public comment? Chair, that looks like all the public comment we have.
Thank you. Are there any commissioner comments? Okay. Do we have any agenda changes? Okay. Can I address our public comment?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. I would just like to say thank you very much. This is such a wonderful program. Eagle Scouts is fabulous. The work that you guys do is much appreciated. I've seen the Eagle Scouts out working at wetlands in past years, and it is amazing. It is very appreciated and needed. My husband has had a flat tire at the top of Newell. It is very distressing to put in all the work to get to the top of Newell and then have to walk your heavy mountain bike all the way down the hill. So he would be a very much a proponent for this project wherever it ends up. And I think it's probably necessary in more than one location. So I think it's great that you're going to start us off. So thank you very much. Any other comments? Why are you smiling like that? Okay. Consent calendar. Item number 1, Director Akita.
Actually, Chair, this is a motion to approve the minutes. And
Oh,
we can
sorry.
do that in
I
just-
should read. I'm going to read it now.
We can just
Okay.
do this in one
Let's-
package too.
All right, let's move on to our consent calendar. Item number 1 is, I was so excited for your presentation, ahead of myself. Okay, item number 1 is Minutes of the Parks and Community Services Commission meeting of May 11th, 2023. The recommendation is to approve the meeting minutes of the Parks and Community Services Commission meeting on May 11th. Do I have a motion to approve? Do you want to do them both?
Yes, unless there's
Okay.
revisions, then we can just approve it all together.
Okay. So the second item on the consent calendar is to approve the meetings of the Special Joint City Council and Parks and Community Services Commission meeting of June 20th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve both of these meeting minutes?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the PCS meeting of May 11th and the special joint city council and PCS meeting of June 20th.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Meeting minutes are approved.
We need to do a quick roll call, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Mamero,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia Ariola,
Here.
Vice Chair Margalotti,
Yes.
and Chair Griggs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now on to the exciting parts. Okay, on our business tonight, update the Parks and Community Services Master Plan. I will turn it over now to Director Akita.
Thank you, Chair. So as you recall, part of this year's work plan that was approved by Council on June 20th, we had requested to add for the city staff to prepare a request for proposal to update our Parks and Community Services Master Plan. The Parks and Community Services Master Plan was created in 2012 by members of the Parks and Community Services Commission, the Open Space Advisory Committee, the Planning Commission, and city staff. And this was a joint effort to be able to create a plan or a guiding document that was intended to represent the city's first comprehensive effort at defining the direction and scope of the American Canyons, parks, civic facilities, open space, recreation programming, and other services that are vital to our community, and two, be the roadmap of how the city of American Canyon will get there. We've done a really great job since 2012, but we've identified that there is absolutely a need to update that. So that's why we're here this evening, and to start that conversation of what it's going to take to be able to update the master plan. And as you recall, back on April 13th, we had pushed this meeting and we had pushed this agenda item until we had updated our work plan with council. And first and foremost, we need to be able to see what the true cost is going to be to obtain a consultant, if we can have a consultant assist us in these efforts. So that's what the RFP process is for, is to be able to see what that cost is, evaluate that cost based off of what we want to have included in that master plan, and then bring it back to this body as well as city council to allocate resources to start the planning process for fiscal year your work plan for fiscal year 24-25. So in the report, what is a master plan? It's a plan that It's a plan that identifies recreational needs in the community, predicts future demands, evaluates feasible options, and develops a strategic action plan and states policies for physical planning. In essence, this plan develops a comprehensive vision of our park system. Individual parks, open space areas, recreation facilities, and programs with its location, natural resources, and vision of the community. And the vision serves as the framework for this long-term use and development of our parks and facilities. And the plan would be a guiding document for local government decision makers, which is city staff, and help shape the delivery of local government parks and recreation services, programs, and activities in a manner that is consistent with the local government's comprehensive plan and policy agenda. After taking a look at what a master plan should include, we have identified several areas that we think that should absolutely be a part of that master plan. One would be identifying a community need and priorities. If you recall, we did have a assessment done back in 2015. That was a really comprehensive report. But we want that to be a part of this master plan. Take a reevaluate where we were in 2015 and where we're going into the future, where we are now. Number 2 is programming and services. What types of programs and services do we want to provide to this community? What is this community interested in? Number 3, assessment of current parks and community services. This should be a thorough assessment of evaluating existing parks and facilities and community services and determine their strengths, their weaknesses, and areas for improvement. Looking at deferred maintenance, I think, is our biggest, something that we've talked about as a body, and how do we address those deferred maintenance costs and issues. Development of goals and objectives. Based on our needs and priorities identified in the community, the plan should establish clear goals and objectives for parks and community services. They should be specific and measurable and achievable, relevant, and time-bound to ensure that they are actionable and effectively implemented. Number 5, design and develop a new parks and facilities. This is where our expansion comes from. What is the future of American Canyon? You know, as a city, we know that we're growing over the next 10 years with the Watson Ranch development and other developments that are going on throughout the city. What does that look like? What other parks do we need to add? What other facilities are in need to support our community's growth? Number 6 is funding and resource allocations. How are we going to get there? What's our funding? What are we going to have? Park impact fees? Are we going to have general fund contributions? Are we going to have whatever else of what we can identify, grants, things like that can help us get there with these new developments and also with these with the deferred maintenance. And then the implementation plan, the most important part, is how are we going to implement the plan? We need to have strategies for enhancing and maintaining existing parks and facilities. And they need to include regular maintenance and upkeep. We talk about just maintaining some of our facilities right now. We're using the use of our facilities have changed over time. For example, Com Park 1 was not intended to be an athletic field. Neither was Kimberly, but we're using them as athletic fields. We need to address the ongoing maintenance concerns and what we're going to do to maintain them so that way they can grow. That way it stays relevant and grows with our community. In addition, a plan can take anywhere between, depending on the complexity and the size of the community, the plan can take anywhere between 6 months to 2 years. And the reason for that is because the amount of community engagement that is involved when you're developing a master plan. It's really important that whoever we decide, if we do use a consultant, that they understand that there will be multiple community engagement opportunities where we're going to want to meet with our community and our constituents to understand what they want and what the needs are and where they see the future of parks and recreation here in American Canyon. So that absolutely would be a part of that process. They would also be required to collect data and analysis, plan development, and also look at the city's general plan. As you recall, the city is going through a process of updating the general plan. There is a section within the updated general plan that is specific to Parks and Recreation that is included in your packet this evening. That's the draft. But that would be part of it as well. That would need to be a part of that conversation. And then including the other resources. Like I mentioned, we already have the park assessment, the needs assessment that was done in 2015. We have, I know that was an error. I do have an update to the bicycle plan. We actually have one that's in 2020, so please forgive me. We'll get you the updated one. But we have the 2020 bicycle plan. And then we also have the current master plan. You know, I think that has a lot of great information of where we were several years ago and where at that time what we were envisioning, and just using all of those documents as part of the RFP process. So that way, if we do hire a consultant, they have everything together and they have those documents and they can get a better understanding of what is important to our community. So, like I mentioned, this is more of an informational item, but I also want to hear your feedback. If there's anything that you feel that you would like to see within that master plan that we're not considering this evening, but the whole point is to bring this to your attention so that way city staff can start working on the RFP, put it together, and solicit so that way we could get a better understanding of what the master plan, how long it's going to take, what the resources are going to be required to get it done, i.e. cost or city staff time, a consultant, and what that means from this body as well, and taking that to council as the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Akita. Are there any commissioner comments or questions regarding this item?
Yeah, I had a question. So what does it look like if we were to get a consultant, or what's the cost, or what's the average for that?
I don't know the cost of that. That's why we're doing this RFP process. That was one of the main reasons why that we didn't just go straight into the update this year. We had tabled this item from last year's work plan to this year's work plan. But one of the major holes that we had is we didn't know what the cost would be to hire a consultant. And really the consultant is it's based off of the scope of work of what you want them to do. And so outlining your expectations, that's what the RFP is for, is to outline what that work is looking like, and then they will provide a bid of what it would cost to complete that. And you can hire a consultant that only does part of it. You can hire a consultant that will do all of it. It really just depends on what we're looking for as help and assistance, and getting a better idea of when we go to council next year to say we want to update this plan, here are the resources that are needed to do that. We have a clearer picture of what we're asking for.
And then my other question is, how much of this master plan update could we do in-house in comparison if we get a consultant, or what does that look like here in-house if we were to do that?
So to do a project like this in-house, it most likely will take longer than 2 years. With the amount of staff time that would be required to do a comprehensive evaluation of our community, with all the community engagement of what would need to be done to build a master plan, that will take the city more than 2 years. Right now, I would be the only staff person working on that. With all the other job responsibilities and duties that I'm tasked with. And that's why we really want to have a better understanding of, if we're going to do this, this is the amount of time that's going to take, with the support of either a consultant or hiring an additional part-time person. That's really what this process is for, is to determine what resources are going to be required to get this done.
Just for clarification, when we met in April, I know that there was discussion about us needing to wait until the council finished their general plan before we got into this. So the question would be, when, I know that timeline still was not for some time, so what would we be looking at or adding to without waiting for that particular piece? And then my second question is, what would our role be if there is a consultant hired? Would they be bringing information for us to review, or what would our part be in that?
Sure. So to answer your question number one, the intention was never to wait for the general plan to be fully completed. That's a longer process than the Parks and Recreation piece being approved. Right now, you have the draft, and as it is right now, it's a pretty good draft, and that's what we were going to use moving forward. With parts to number two, the point of this body is to have you be involved in the master plan update process from start to finish, as well as OSATs. There's portions of the plan that are overlapping of this commission, as well as the OSATs commission with the open space. And having you be a part of that conversation and discussion, and being involved with the community. This body in itself is encouraged to engage with the community, to solicit feedback. We want to get as many people's opinions as we can, and this body would be a part of that conversation and be part of shepherding that. And again, when it comes to the actual consultant, I don't know what the level of the consultant is going to be and how much staff time is going to be involved, because that's going to determine on the amount of resources that we want to allocate towards and we want to ask for. But I do envision the body, this commission, being heavily involved in the update.
So we have the old, but you have done some work on a new draft. Is that what you're saying?
No, I have not.
No,
the general
okay.
plan is the draft that that's in your packet. That's attachment
Okay.
2. So attachment 2, which is the 2023 draft city general plan, it's specific to Parks and Recreation. They're calling it the Environment, Parks and Recreation chapter. It's chapter 7. I believe it's about 14 pages. It is a draft, but it's a really well written draft, and that's what we would use as from the general plan. We don't physically need the general plan to be completed to be able to do our plan, because again, the vision of Parks and Recreation is going to be the community's vision, and that's going to come with community engagement, which is the same community that's helping shape the general plan. So it will be in alignment with the general plan.
Okay, sorry, I guess I didn't understand that this was in this packet for us to, I mean, it's this thick. I didn't realize that that draft was for us to give feedback on this evening.
No, I don't need you to give feedback
Okay.
on that. That's just part of that's going to be part of the packet when we go out for the RFP. I wanted you to see all the documents that we would be including when we go out for a request for a proposal. We're going to be including all these important documents that we've already spent a lot of time and energy on, which is the bicycle plan, the needs assessment that was done in 2015. Even the current master plan that was created back in 2012 has a lot of great information. It's a snapshot of the city back then and where they expected to see that growth. So those, I wasn't expecting you to read it all by tonight. It was for you to get a big picture of what the RFP process is going to include and the additional documents that we would be asking to be a part of that master plan, because we want them to all speak together. It doesn't make sense to have a bike plan and a needs assessment plan and another plan if they're not all working together for a master plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Public comment?
It's up to you. You don't have to do public comment yet until you open public comment. We're still discussing if you would like.
Okay, let's wait just a minute then. Any other commissioner comments or questions at this time? Okay, well, I'll make a comment and then we'll open public comment. So thank you very much for that, Director Akita. There are lots of moving parts in this and lots of entities that need to come together to ensure that we all have the same vision and goals and are traveling down the same path to help us get there. I know that in the past, one of my frustrations with our master plans and general plans and plans of the city in general is that things would get planned and put on paper and then never actually come to fruition. So I think that having a plan that actually is on a timeline and there are strategic goals laid out specifically to allow us to better get to fruition and achieve those projects is fantastic and is quite exciting from my perspective, because I would love to see some things come to fruition. I think it really builds trust in our community to put out a plan and then have something happen and then have, like we had last night, a ribbon cutting event. We said we were going to put in an accessible park, and we put in an accessible park, and then we celebrated it, and now it's there for our community to enjoy. And I love it when things happen like that. So I think the idea of hiring a consultant to sort of be the top of our triangle, lead the charge to get us all going in the same direction, someone who is skilled in this, someone who's done this before, someone who knows how to get us there. I think, we're going to pay for what we get, and where do we want to invest our money, and how good do we want the plan to be, and do we want someone who knows how to garner public engagement and have community meetings and involve the commissions appropriately. I know that seems like a bigger project than I would like to be accountable for. I also don't feel I have the training for it, and I feel like it would be a lot for staff to do. And we probably have someone in the audience who can relate to how much work it is to do a master plan on their own. So that is my comment, and my opinion is that it would be great to have a consultant lead the charge on this to get us where we want to go as a community and get that community engagement. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I actually do have a question. In either the master plan or the draft city general plan, is there consideration to any or other organizations that also supplement Parks and Rec? I know that there's a biking coalition here. I know ACCPF does a lot of things, and there's other organizations. Is that woven into either of those plans, or is there consideration for those?
So I don't know if it's woven into the general plan because that's more citywide planning where things go. In the current Parks and Community Services Master Plan, it references community involvement and nonprofit organizations and community partners quite consistently throughout that master plan. And I think that's true to American Canon. I think that's still true today. And that needs to be recognized and acknowledged. To Chair Griggs' point, last night we had a ribbon cutting for Northampton Park. That was in partnership with the American Canyon Community Parks Foundation. They ended up getting us the grant. They turned the grant over to the city, and they helped us get that project done. That is a perfect example of how a city and a nonprofit organization or a community partner works well together and supports each other. And I would like to see that in the future plan. I think it's important to recognize that. Our city's very unique. I've worked in many different places, and the community involvement in this city is amazing. And that's part of our spirit. And I think when we start soliciting community engagement, that's going to come out loud and clear that this community wants to continue that, because our department alone, Parks and Recreation, works with 21 different nonprofit organizations and community partners. So when you see things going on throughout the city may not be the face of it, but our community, we're supporting our community partners in some shape or form. And that's the beauty of it. We may not have the city staff or the city resources, and a community partner comes out and says, we want to do this. And we're like, how do we do it? Perfect example, the Boy Scout projects. That's a perfect example of another great partnership of being able to support one another. They have the resources, they have the skill, they have the ability to get things done. What can the city do to support your efforts? So I think that needs to be acknowledged in the future plan as well.
Thank you.
Real quick, just to Commissioner Plummer's point, the needs assessment did make reference to the American Canyon Community and Parks Foundation. I, kind of recall that generally, but kind of looking at it specifically, it's on page 495 of the needs assessment. The recently formed ACCPF Foundation, it was in there as a potential funding source. Times have changed though, and kind of to look at ACCPF as solely a funding source is, well, that's, we have been, we've been a partner with them as well as other groups for, the successful partnership for a long time. So I do agree with Commissioner Plummer's comment that our partnership with these, the many, many nonprofit groups around here it will be important to have that woven into the information that the consultant will be reviewing, and emphasize that we're going to get that it is essential in our parks planning. So yes, just basically saying they are more than a funding source. They are an important partner.
Yes, and if you recall, when ACCPF was created, it was a funding source. It was an extension of Parks and Recreation, and it has since evolved. And recognizing, again, not necessarily saying funding sources, but our department lives and breathes this concept that we have community partners. We work with community partners. I mean, I have a specific person dedicated to support community-ran events. She is a full-time staff person, and majority of her time is to support community ran events. And that is already woven into our department. It's woven into the city. I know that that's something that is important to our council and to our city manager. And that will definitely be made loud and clear in the documents when we do the RFP, because it is part of who we are and what we do in this city.
It's also quite timely that former Commissioner Matt Plate is here as well. I'm sure he probably has some comments.
Thank you, fellow commissioners. Also, I think that it's important to note that in 2015, when the needs assessment was done and ACCPF was mentioned, that they were just getting off the ground. And look what has happened in the last 8 years. They are a powerful community force that has done amazing things for our community. And they put on a fabulous fundraiser, and they raise a ton of funds and do so much good for our community. So I think also we want to, and this is something that, the consultant would know better than we would know. Do we want to list out all our community partners specifically and assign them to various projects? Probably not, because we never know when another community partner is going to pop up and become as big as ACCPF in a matter of 8 years. We just want to continue to partner with our community nonprofits. We do want it to be woven in, but we don't necessarily want to assign things.
Yeah, and I know you're going to comment. If I can just say, I think when I asked that question about the interwoven intricacies of the opportunities, I think is really what I was looking for, right? And so if we have a master plan, or we have a draft or a general plan that talks about opportunities to partner with the city, right? And we have great examples, as have been mentioned, and we continue to have great examples. But to your point, we don't know what the future examples could be. And so I guess what I'm asking is if we have that, and it sounds like we do, that opportunistic portion that says we allow opportunities for the city to be partnered with organizations outside that are not governmental agencies that can help supplement or gap fill program needs, then maybe that, again, because it is part of the spirit and the ethos of who we are as a city, I just think it needs to be written that way. That's all. So thank you.
Agreed. And that we can definitely make that as part of, again, our vision, because I definitely think it's part of the vision of the department. And I wouldn't, to Chair Griggs' point, I wouldn't want to be so specific on projects or groups, because those even evolve. And the projects may change in the future. It might be something different. We weren't planning on putting signage down at the wetlands, and that was a project that got brought to us. So I think being a little bit more broad and open-ended and allowing those ideas come to us is also really nice to the community, because they can see something out there and then they can make a proposal, and we're like, wow, we didn't even realize that was a problem or an issue. That's an easy fix. Yes, let's partner on that. So we can have that be a part of the vision, and I think that is true to our department. It's a big part of what we do. Working with our nonprofit organizations and community partners in many different ways, and not just in projects, but in events and volunteerism and whatever else that they have the spirit to do.
And also, I think that if a consultant is hired to do this work, that I would like to see the consultant meet with all of our nonprofit community groups and get their feedback on what they would like to see included, especially if they are parks and open space founded. Okay, if there are no other commissioner comments?
Yeah, and I just kind of wanted to elaborate. I know we have like a very skillful team, if we were to do this in-house, but if we also consider a consultant, it would be nice to see like a draft or an outline, or kind of have an overview of what this master plan would look like before we kind of allocate money to spend resources to make this happen. Because we have a really good plan here, like set in stone. Yeah, we might need to be more strategic, get data-driven analysis, and go from there. But we should make some comparison before we just jump to the conclusion. Because what I would like is for the city, us to be more involved, be more transparent with the community, and again, allow that interwovenness to connect all the different pieces that make us one whole. But yeah, an outline would be nice to see on both ends, just to view the comparisons.
So what we were envisioning, the whole part of an RFP is to put the work out there, the scope of work out there, and then anybody can submit their proposal, right? So anybody can do it, and then, because we're outlining the work, and then they would tell us, okay, this is the cost, this is what we'll do, and then the idea of what I would be that I think would be the best process is to bring it back here, have a conversation and discussion, and then get prepared for when we go to council for our next work plan, that we know exactly what they want. Like, we know exactly what we want and the resources that we need to get that job done. And that's where you would have the breakdown and then the cost for that service, or how much staff time is going to be allocated if, for instance, whatever that is. So it would just have everything outlined, to your point, Commissioner Garcia Arreola. So yes, that is the vision. It's not, the RFP is just going out for a request for bid, people responding to that, and then looking at that and seeing what that looks like for the future to build this plan.
Sorry, I thought of another question. Is there a budget for the consultant? And that would be something you'd be requesting. Would it come from the general fund? Would it come from your budget, or how does that look?
Right. So we don't have a budget right now for it. That's why we're going out for requests for bid, because we don't know how much it's going to cost. I'm not quite sure what the funding source is going to be. We're going to have to determine that. We're going to have to tell council what that funding source is going to be. So if and when we figure out what that cost is, we'll have to go back and see what's going to fund it, how we're going to fund it, because that's going to be a part of the conversation with council as well. They're going to want to know that.
Okay. At this time, we can open this item up for public comment.
Chair, before we get to the public comment in the audience, I just want to acknowledge that we did receive 3 public comments. They were forwarded to the Commissioner's city emails. Those were received by Carlotta Sonato, Tammy Wong, and Jeanette Goyechi. And now we'll go ahead and open up public comment. Matt, could you please state your name for the record?
Matthew Plate.
Thank you.
And for the record, I was one of the authors of the 2012 plan, so we did write it. It actually was very little was written by staff. Most of it was written by the members of the commission and the open space committee. I will tell you that at that time, a lot of the people on the commission and the committee had professional jobs where they actually were working in the fields related to writing plans. So even with that, I think the 2012 plan fell pretty short from what I would have liked to seen, but it took us a couple of years to put it into play. I mean, to get it written. But I feel like it was important to get it out there. It said in the city general plan that a master plan for the park should be established soon after the city was incorporated. It took us 20 years to get that plan done. I feel ashamed. I was the chair of the commission for 10 or 12 years, and it took a lot of years pushing in order for us to do it, and we didn't have allocation of funding from council. It would be good to get a consultant that could help, but also look and see, where you also have other resources. I will tell you, I feel like my greatest success from the plan is I wrote the finance section, and when I was researching it, I found that there are other cities that had funding organizations. And so I purposely wrote into the plan that we should be looking to have a partner nonprofit to help fund parks and recreation. And the funny thing is, then Janelle came onto the commission and she read the plan section that I wrote, and she said, we're going to make that nonprofit. And that's how ACCPF happened. We wrote it into the master plan. And I feel like I didn't do very much work. All I had to do is write a few lines in the master plan. But without that vision in the master plan, we would not have had ACCPF. It was Janelle reading the plan that pushed us to actually make that happen. And I want you guys to realize that in vision. If there's something you think that we need, put it into the plan. You know, if there's another community partner, if we need someone to help us with bicycles or with something else, we should put that in the plan, because it might actually, it might come to fruition. You know, maybe a lot of things that were in the plan didn't happen, but again, that's something I'm very proud of, and I think that is a reason for us to go forward and try to make another plan and make one that's really going to work for the city. So thank you. And thank you, Fran, for all your work helping us with the 2012 plan, too.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to make a public comment? Looks like all the public comment we have at this time, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so have we concluded business item 3? Or
Yes.
business item 1, number 3? Sorry.
Yes, Chair. This was more informational for you to know that we were going to start the RFP process to get a better understanding of what the scope of work is going to look like, as well as what the cost and the resources that would be associated with that work.
Thank you for all of these resources you have provided us with.
Yes, they are a light reading.
We will get right on that so that we can come back well informed. Okay, moving on to business item number 2. Parks and Facility Renaming Policy. Recommendation, review and discuss the City of American Canyon's Parks and Facility Naming Policy pertaining to the former Napa Junction Elementary School, Community Park 1, and Community Park 2. Director Akita?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as you recall, as part of your work plan for this fiscal year, we had put on there that we wanted to rename the former Napa Junction Elementary School that we are currently using as a community center. The city acquired this property back in September 2022, and we got it online for summer programming. It's been a great facility. We've really enjoyed having some space to run some classes and some programs, but we really want to put a stamp on that facility. We really want to make it our own and stop calling it the former Napa Junction site. I have named it the Napa Junction Community Center informally just to get us through the summer, but we do need to officially rename that facility. In addition to that evening, council had expressed that they would also like us to look at Community Park 1 and Community Park 2. And so with us having to rename 3 facilities, one being a facility and 2 being a parks, excuse me, that is actually going to put us into having us to follow our policy, which is the Parks and Facility Renaming Policy. This policy was adopted back in November 2007, which would actually has a formal, I cannot talk today, I'm so sorry, I need to slow down. That formalizes the process for naming any city parks or facilities. This policy outlines the procedures, including forming a technical advisory committee, and that committee would include 1 council member, 1 Parks and Community Services commissioner, 1 resident at large, and 1 youth resident at large. The TAC would conduct several community engagements and public meetings, soliciting feedback from community members and formally bringing a recommendation back to this commission. And then what this commission would take all of that information, and then you would make a recommendation to City Council. That's all great, but also since our meeting in June, Council has expressed the need that they would really like to obtain the history of American Canyon from 1992 on. They feel that that would be relevant to what we're doing now, and they want to do that first before we start the renaming process. So what city staff is going to be looking at is hiring a consultant to go out and interview prominent figures of this community that may have contributed to shaping American Canyon and recognize those individuals and getting that history down and eventually transcribing that and turning it into an actual book that we can have as a city and as a resource. We feel that's important. There's a lot of amazing people that have contributed to this community that we may not be aware of. And for us to be able to make an informed decision as a body, we feel that it's important that we recognize those people and we learn about them and we understand the historical, cultural stamp that they've put on this community. We don't know why Community Park 2 is named Community Park 2. We don't know why Community Park 1 is named Park 1. What's the significance of those parks? Who helped make those parks come to life? Those are the things that we wanted to find out before we start throwing names out there, because we feel that there's certain individuals that we may not be aware of that have contributed to what American Canyon is today. So, in the meantime, before we start the naming process, the city staff is going to work with a consultant to get the historical information, and that information will be used to help guide us while we choose and engage with the community for new names for these facilities. So the naming process is going to be put on hold until we get the historical information that we need to be able to do this. In the meantime, I wanted to bring this policy to light. It's a very interesting policy when you look at it and you read it. The body, the TAC committee, includes one council member, one commissioner, one community member, and one youth community member. It's interesting in the fact that this policy has never been used since its creation. That's an interesting point, number one. When we did have an opportunity to use it, when we updated the name for the adult active community center, we didn't have a council member and we didn't have a youth person on that TAC meeting. We had 2 commissioners from this body and we had 2 city staff, and then we had 7 other members who are that had the adult active background that participated in that naming process. They ended up having their TAC committee. They ended up soliciting the community. They ended up finding out a name that the community wanted to name that facility. But that's just showing you that even with the policy as it is written, we're not using it in the way that it was written. And I wanted to bring this to your attention because to my understanding, when we met with council on June 20th, I got the impression that they wanted this body to be the body to come up with the name and not have a subcommittee doing that work. So I wanted to bring that to your attention and kind of get your feedback on the policy, and if this is an opportunity to maybe update the policy while we're waiting to get the historical information. So I'm open to your discussion this evening.
I have a couple questions. What's the time frame that they are planning as far as hiring a consultant and having that history documented?
We hope to actually have the oral history videotaped this fairly soon. We have a couple ideas and a couple people have been identified to us. So we're going to reach out to them and see what that looks like and what the timeline would look like to be able to video that information. We don't physically need the transcript or the book. We just want the videos because I think that would be very helpful to watch, and then we can use that as documentation. But the plan is to get that portion off the ground fairly quickly. There's an idea of even soliciting a high school student at AC High School, ACHS, to maybe be a part of that and working with Beth Goff on that and just talking to her. We do work with the high school on many different things. We have Citizen Advisory Committee, Citizens Academy, where the high school students participate in that. We have a government day. There's different ideas that are being thrown out there on who's going to videotape and who we're going to use. But we hope to get that off the ground fairly quickly.
And what does the policy look like in other cities as far as committees and how they do their naming? Do you have a sense for that?
I don't have a sense of that. I don't. I know that based off of the feedback that I interpreted from this council is that they weren't expecting a subcommittee for this. It was clear that they wanted this body to engage with the community and be that face and start that process. I'm not familiar with what other cities are doing.
And I'm actually not sure what happened because I was on the committee when there was other members that were involved and we would meet and the discussion. And I know that it came back to us and it was going to go to council, but then suddenly it was named. So I feel a lot of that happened during COVID time. And so I don't really know, because I know there was always reference to this naming policy, but then there weren't people in place to follow through with that as far as, you know, there was a lapse in leadership. So I don't really even know how that, it was a name, but anyway, the process, I think there was a lapse in leadership. So I don't know if it was necessarily not following. I don't really know.
And that wasn't to point out
Yeah.
that this commission or any commission wasn't following the policy. The point that I was trying to make is that since its creation, the city has not used this policy. When you look at most of the parks, like Shenandoah, most likely was named by the developer. Same with Watson Ranch. You know, like all these parks, Northampton Park was named by the developer. We really haven't had to use it. And it wasn't a knock to this commission to sit there and say you didn't follow the policy. It was just an example of, does this policy fit with what we want to do? Does it make sense? Can we do this in a different way? After interpreting what council wants this body to do, does this policy make sense to form an additional TAC committee, separating it out with one commissioner, one council member, one member at large, and one youth commissioner when we really haven't ever used it? And it wasn't to point out that what we did with the Adult Activity Center was incorrect, because we don't think it was incorrect. We felt that the people that served on that TAC committee did a fabulous job. It actually went through all the processes that it was supposed to go through. The only thing that it didn't have was a council member in a youth body, but it did go to council. It did get adopted by a resolution. It's formally named the way that it is. You did the application process. You did everything. That's just the example of, does this policy really fit with what we're trying to do here? Does it make sense to have an additional subcommittee? I personally didn't get that from council. I think it's a little odd that we would ask a council member to serve at this level when they're the ones who are making the decision ultimately. So that's why this policy is here for discussion. It's to show that, yes, it was developed in 2007, but it hasn't been used in the form that it's been written.
My initial reaction to this is that the policy's likely outdated, for sure. And in lieu of the policy, it sounds like a TAC team was developed and accomplished what needed to be accomplished based on a protocol and procedures. My general feeling also is that if the vetting process for this commission is as stringent and as good as it has been, and you add the right type of people on here, and I also think this commission does have a youth spot too, correct?
Correct.
So if that gets filled, then you almost fulfill having a youth person on the commission that fulfills the youth obligation. You have a diverse group of individuals on here, which I think is more than capable of going through the SOP or procedure of coming up with a naming or nomenclature for new parks or new developments or whatnot. However, you did mention that part of that process for that last TAC team included people who are knowledgeable about that specific building or property or whatever it was, the active adult center. Anyways, my point being is, I do think the policy needs to be updated. Two, I think this commission or any future commission can probably handle any type of naming if all the seats are filled. That would include the youth position. And three, I think there still should be an outside person or people that are specific to the property or to the area of which I don't know what I'm looking for. Maybe there's an expertise or knowledge of a particular site, because even though, again, there's a great vetting process for this committee to be selected, we may not all have the background or information of a particular naming, building or site or land use or whatever it might be. So I don't know if we're making recommendations, but that's kind of my general sense of how I would view this right now.
Yeah, and remember that as this body, you're engaging with the public. So in essence, right now, anybody can come to your meetings and they can tell you how they feel. They can give you that expertise. They can give you that advice. And when we're naming, we're already soliciting feedback from the community because we'll still have an application. There's going to be a community element still involved. They're still going to have to fill out the application, put in why they would not want to name it that way, and then this body would review it as a whole. So that process would still be included, and that would be my recommendation, is still have that community involvement, that community engagement. Because again, the whole point of this is to involve them and get the history, solicit community feedback. What do you want it to be called? Is there somebody in this community that we're just not aware of that we want to name this building after, and why? The Philip West Aquatic Center, that's a perfect example. That was specifically named after an individual of this community. So that is this process. It's, do we need to have a subcommittee? And because that's where the question is. Based off of what we heard, what we're interpreting from council is they want this body to name those 3 facilities as a whole.
Yeah, I just want to talk from my experience in parks and, overall. I think it's a great policy and it has a good structure, but I also think we should amend it, and adopt something where we're naming a city park or facilities in which, we ensure the names, for example, people are founders of the city, the people that we honor for bringing us to where we're at today, and also bringing the history of organizations or events that are significant to the city, and also some renaming ideas would be, the history and the culture of American Canyon. For example, Native Americans were here. If we look at the county of San Mateo, a lot of those lands were to Native American, and they were named after the Ohlone tribe. So I really think we should consider our culture and also adapting all these different aspects to this policy. That way it's inclusive and diverse, and it allows us to keep growing and evolve over time, because there is various parks, and I think we just need to get those foundations and start from there.
So I have a question, Director Aikida, and then some comments. First question is, I understand that the oral history project is going to take place before the naming project. Is that a directive from council? Because I just kind of see both of those issues as separate.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a
Council wants
directive
us,
from council.
correct. Council wants us to get the oral history of American Canyon from 1992 on before we start naming any parks or facilities. They really want to understand American Canyon and its culture and its history and any prominent individuals that may help shape where we are and who we are today. We have a lot of great matriarchs in this community, but there's other people that we may have not recognized. And that may either be here or or maybe have passed on. Getting that history is important, and it's going to really help shape future naming. We have the history from the beginning of American Canyon all the way up to 1992, but as of 1992, we don't have anything. And that's a hole and that's a gap. And so we don't want to miss anybody. This is our opportunity to really capture all of that before we start naming things.
Gotcha. Okay, and that's their directive. That's
Yes.
within their discretion. That's completely fine. I do want this body to know that, contracts are being negotiated and entered into for areas of Old Napa Junction with, community groups out there. So, I guess not to rush the process, but it sure would be helpful to, start to be on that name, to be very active with that naming process. I guess the sooner that we can start referring it to as, X.
Well, right now it's the Napa Junction Community Center.
Right.
And it's going to be.
That's what we're all calling it.
And that's what we're all calling it. I despise the word former. It's not very inviting, and it really is our community center. I mean, that's really our hub. That's what we plan to use it as. And to your point, we have various community members that are going to be able to use it. And so we think right now the community center is just going to fit until we come up with the proper name. But again, we hope that any member of this community, if in time we do start the naming process, that they come forward and they express and they fill an application and they come voice what they would like, because that's part of the process.
And then comments about the naming policy. So it's quite surprising that we have a policy in place and it's never been used. My fear on that is, one, why do we have a naming policy in the first place? And two, in the future, if we don't follow the naming policy that's on the books, an attack can be made on it by folks saying that the name that was chosen by whatever body is not legitimate because we didn't follow our own naming process. I think that's something that we should be really concerned about. The second point is, yes, I mean, just a very quick review of the naming policy. There's some weaknesses there. What I see is that there's 4 members of it on, there's currently 4 members of the naming policy. That can result in a tie. That's why there's 5 members of this body. We'll never have a tie. So and also the makeup of that naming subcommittee can be very close, should be very closely examined. So yeah, that's it. I think if we have a naming policy, we really should follow it. And 2, if it's not working as envisioned, then let's suggest a change so that it fits with, the reality of what we do in the city.
I think to piggyback on what you're saying, I know we have the sense that the council wants us to be that body, but it seems to me that they need to probably review their resolution, and that they need to decide what is valid and what's not valid, and then we go forward from that, because I do think having a policy in place is important.
So the great thing about this body is you get to make policy recommendations. That's part of this body, and that's why we're bringing this to you this evening. We have recognized that there may be a conflict in the direction that we may have interpreted versus the actual policy itself. And that's why we wanted to bring it here for discussion and get your feedback, because this is an opportunity to review it. And does it really fit with the vision of what we want to do moving forward? Does it make sense to have a subcommittee versus having this body, who ultimately oversees this entire process anyways, be that subcommittee? And that's the great thing about this body, is we get to review policy and we get to make those recommendations to council. If you foresee you want to see a change, this is the time to do it. So that way we can draft it and get it in front of council to make that change, so we can be ready for when we start naming facilities and parks.
Well, I have some comments. When I first joined the commission, well, it was deep in COVID times, so I didn't come to a physical meeting for over a year. But something that did happen was there was an extensive list of subcommittees, and it was like one person from this committee and one person from this commission and one person from council and one person from the public, and all of these tiny little silos of subcommittees from my perspective when I joined made all these decisions. And then we would get on Zoom and talk about all the decisions that had already been made, and I would spend 4 hours of my life going, that's great. How do I get on a subcommittee? I thought I was getting on a body to be involved and be part of the decision making and represent our community and get community engagement. And it was very confusing to me. So the death of that extensive list of subcommittees with COVID not hurt my feelings any, because I felt like I never got invited to be on a subcommittee. And that was distressing. So I'm excited at the possibility of not needing these subcommittees and actually doing the work. And on June 20th, it was very clear to me that council was tasking us with renaming these parks and the new community center. And so that is a very clear path that I think that we should consider taking, is we've been tasked with this. So we rewrite the policy to match what council asked us to do. And then we actively engage our community, get feedback, get people to come to the meeting, get people to write in, email, whatever it is, provide multiple modes of communication and engagement with the community for them to let us know what they would like it to be named, take the historical consultants' input, and then make our decision. And if we can make the policy match that with regard to community centers and parks and recreation related facilities and parks, then I would love to do that. That's it. Public comment, yes, please.
Fran Lemus. A little bit of the history. There was some people in American Canyon that really did a lot, and that was Dolly and Mickey Mikulogic. Napa Junction School became Napa Junction School when Mickey was a supervisor up at in the county, and he really pushed to get Napa Junction School. So I think that the school should be named after them. But anyway, the history a little bit up. Dolly wrote the history for up until 1992. Mickey and Dolly they really were the organization that got the city incorporated. They took 3 times to do it. They did it. Dolly wrote a little newsletter. I don't know if you guys knew, it's called the 5th District. It was a little newsletter, and we all delivered it to every house in American Canyon. And we all had little neighborhoods, like 2 or 3 blocks, and it was because of Dolly. And Dolly wrote the history up until 1992. I was on that committee with her, but she did the work. And we've been trying, Beth and I and a couple of other people have been trying for years to continue the history after incorporation. But we just, we're getting old. We just didn't get to it. But it needs to be done. It really needs to be done. And I think something should be named after Dolly and Mickey Mikulogic, because they really were the foundation, not me, they were the foundation of the city. She was my mentor. I worked with her. It was a privilege for me to work with her. But she really was the one that they both were the ones that made the city incorporated. They made things happen. They were the force behind the scenes. So I think that's one name that should be considered. And there's probably a lot of others too, but they really are the pioneers of American Canyon. So I'm glad to see this committee, and I'm glad to see that you guys are on top of it and just to go forward to the rest of the history. And there is an organization that does books. They approached us at that time, but you have to do the work, and they just publish it. And we just didn't have enough people to do the work. So that needs to be done. So I really applaud you all for doing this. So American Canyon's great, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody in the Zoom audience that'd like to make a public comment? Please raise your hand. Chair, that looks like all the public comment we have right now.
Thank you, Ms. Lozano. Are there any other commissioner comments, questions?
Just one last comment on subcommittees in general. Again, I haven't read the whole policies on why during COVID. I'm sure there's various reasons why subcommittees were developed and whatnot. But it seems to me if the council has a policy on subcommittees, which they probably do, that it should be reviewed. I think each governing body should make that determination whether or not they need a subcommittee and appoint a subcommittee versus taking on a task or a project or what it is. And to what Fran was saying, if we have the bandwidth to do it as a committee, then we should task ourselves with it. If we find that we're inundated with too many projects and we don't have the bandwidth, then we should be able to appoint a subcommittee to do something. I don't think subcommittees should just be a part of the process automatically. That's why the commissions are appointed. So that's just kind of my general thought on, again, I don't know if that's a council thing that we can recommend to them, but maybe that's something that needs to be reviewed.
And to make a recommendation based on Director Akita's ask, I would like to recommend that this policy be rewritten to reflect Parks and Community Services Commission, perhaps in partnership with OSATS, would be tasked with the responsibility of renaming all parks and community service facilities with active community engagement, maybe some sort of timeline written in if there does need to be consultants involved, such as in this case.
Is anybody feeling any difference of opinion with Chair Griggs? Because this is our time to discuss it and figure out what we want to do moving forward. Because what I'm hearing is that we want to update and make this body the body that reviews the applications instead of having a separate TAC committee.
The way I read the policy is that the PCS Commission, we make the recommendation to council after aggressive public outreach. So that's the kind of public outreach part of it. I guess the questionable, in my mind, the questionable part is this technical advisory committee with a council member, a parks commissioner, a resident at large, and one youth. I mean, they make the looks like they make the recommendation to PCS, and PCS makes the final recommendation to council. I agree with you, Director Akita, that including some of these, specifically council members and a parks commissioner, is kind of make work. Probably not necessary. But we have it within our, within our power to make to recommend that change. But
I'm getting, I'm sorry, Commissioner Memorial, I'm getting feedback that they cannot hear you on the mic.
and that's because it's not on.
Thank
Okay.
you.
The way I read the policy, the current policy is PCS reviews, makes a recommendation to council after aggressive public outreach. The questionable part, and I think the part that probably needs changing, is this technical advisory committee, both in the makeup of it. Having a council member and a parks commissioner on there is probably repetitive. So I think, well, if the commission agrees, we kind of concentrate our efforts on tweaking that part of it. That's it. That's my, that's my comments.
I agree as well. I think though what would be, might be cumbersome is how the process would go with, and how the timeline would go with all of the potential public input or whatever we think, and how we have that discussion and how that looks. That, I don't know how that would, that might be awkward.
Well, we can, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. You're all familiar with how council runs their meetings. They have multiple business items, they have multiple consent items, they have public hearings, and it's a very well-oiled, very strategic approach to their agenda. And the way that I'm envisioning, if we do change this policy and we make this body, the body that engages with the community, is that we actually we put it on the agenda, we put it out to the community because it's a public meeting, and we engage with the community that way. And the great thing about it is we have the application process as well. So we're asking the community to provide their input. We can have very dynamic conversations about the naming of, like, once we get the history, we can talk about it at this body on television, get it out to the community, communicate it that way, and solicit feedback from the community and have them come to these meetings and engage with you directly and giving you important information. I had no idea that Mickey and Dolly were the pioneers of American Canyon. I mean, that's the information that we want to hear, that we want people to come to our meetings and engage with us and be a part of that process. So with changing this policy and having you, this body, this commission, be the TAC committee, you're all included in that conversation. It's not a siloed approach. And then when you make an informed decision to council, who is the deciding body for the city, that they are all hearing from you as a body, one united voice, and then they're able to make an informed decision. I don't think subcommittees are bad. I think that's how you get a lot of projects done quickly. So I don't want to dub it that way, but I think this is an important enough topic that this body can tackle as a commission together. So what I'm hearing, just to recap, because what I'm going to envision, I'm just going to go back and talk to the city manager about the feedback that I received this evening. I'm hearing that for the most part, the policy is fine. The only change that you're recommending is the TAC, which would be this body. And then this body would serve as the body that would engage with the community, that would review the applications, and then would make the recommendation to council.
I would like to see a specified timeline for the community engagement piece.
Got it. Are you talking about so many meetings, so many opportunities?
Either that or just a simple number of days. You know, once the discussion begins, once it's put out for community engagement, it's a 90-day process until, you know, the commission has a meeting and then makes a decision, and then it's another 30 days until that recommendation is made to council. Just something that's very specific so that it doesn't hang out there for forever. And then get called Community Park 1.
And then also to Commissioner Garcia Ariola's point, I'll make sure that we capture the history and culture as well, and to make sure that that's in the policy if it's not already, as being part of the naming criteria. A condition, it could be a naming criteria. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. On to management and staff reports.
Sorry, I'm throwing things. I have a lot tonight. All right, first and foremost, the most exciting thing in the room, Northampton Park is officially open. Our all-access universal playground is done and open. We had our ribbon cutting last night at the Chamber of Commerce Meet Me in the Streets. Thank you to Valerie for letting us crash her party, but we had a great turnout, and I think the the best part of last night was seeing all the children and adults on the playground playing. So we're really proud of that project, and thank you to ACCPF for all of their help and support in obtaining the grant. Again, that's a true picture of our partnerships and our community involvement here in American Canyon. We have 2 other playground replacements going on right now. Via Bellagio is almost done. We're waiting on a couple more pieces. And then we have to do the playground inspection and then the install of the engineered wood fiber. As you recall, council did approve the pour in place for this budget year, fiscal year 23-24, as part of the capital improvement program, that we are actually going to be replacing that engineered wood fiber with pour in place. We're in the process with trying to get an updated quote so we can go to council and bring that to them and get that scheduled to be completed. So that will be phase 2 of that project. But right now we're just trying to get the equipment installed and it pass its certification so we can get it open so they can use it until we move forward with phase 2. Linwood Park is the 3rd phase of this project. That is expected to start in October. It is a little bit on back order. We're still waiting for the equipment to get here. It has been shipped. We expect it any day, but just based off of schedules and contractors and things like that, October is going to be the earliest that we can start that last part, and then this project is completely finished. The skate park, I don't know if you've noticed, but they started disassembling the skate park at the behind the Philip West Aquatic Center. That is part of the project to remove the current equipment and move it over to Veterans Park. We're hoping to have that completed before school starts on Wednesday. We do have it scheduled to take place until Friday of next week, but if everything we've asked for them to move a little bit quicker, but we'll see. It really just is dependent on the contractor and what they can get done in a day. So if you see that happening, please stay clear. They are having heavy machinery out there, and just be aware that that is part of this project for the skateboard park. And we do still have that scheduled to construction to start in this fall. We are looking for a youth commissioner for all of our commissions. We are currently have applications out for recruitment. We will be accepting applications until September 10th. We are encouraging all seniors at ACHS to become a youth commissioner. There's 3 opportunities, one for this commission, Parks and Community Services, one for Planning, and one for the Open Space, Active Transportation and Sustainability Commission. So please spread the word. If you need a flyer to hand out, I have one in both English and in Spanish. I will be visiting the high school in the 4th week of August, talking with the seniors to try to push this as well. S'mores and Meteors is this Saturday from 8 to 11 p.m. at the Wetlands. If you would like to participate in that event, it's a lot of fun. It's the one night that we do a party at the Wetlands with silent disco and neon lights, and you get to look at amazing stars and amazing things in the sky, and have unlimited s'mores. So if anybody tells you can only have one, that's not true. You actually get to have multiple s'mores. It's unlimited for anybody who plays to participate. And then lastly, Coastal Cleanup Day is scheduled for September 23rd. That is a volunteer opportunity that we partner with many different organizations. So if you're looking to complete any volunteer hours or you just want to clean up your coastline, please feel free to register on our website. There's multiple volunteer opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have an estimated timeline for the new skate park to open?
So we expect to have it done by December if it starts on time. It shouldn't take very long to construct to our understanding, but they've said it starts in the fall and it should be done by the end of December is what they're estimating at this point.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and commissioner reports. Looks like we have one submitted by Vice Chair Margolotti. And any other closing commissioner comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say great job on the fireworks. It was great. It was beautiful. It was nice seeing a bigger parade this year. The only recommendation is American Canyon Road. Maybe we should close it next year because we had cars on the other side and there was kids and it was just a little heart wrenching. But other than that, beautiful job and thank you for that.
Okay. It looks like we're ready to adjourn. So, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting? All right. I'll just adjourn us then at 7:55. Thank you, everyone, for coming.